Welcome in, everyone. What's up, Knicks Nation? CT here with the one and only Coach Nick, B-Ball Breakdown. Are you ready for a conversation?
I'm in.
Yeah, welcome, Coach. Always good to see you. And look forward to the next hour or so and talking to Knicks Nation. You, of course, dropped some recent content on Jalen Brunson and the Knicks season, talking about Brunson's MVP case. We've got a lot to talk about. It's been a huge part of first part of the NBA season, quote unquote. But here the Knicks sit. We've made it to All-Star break, 4-game losing streak. Unfortunately, not the way we would have liked to be going into an All-Star break, but the fan base is still very optimistic based on the acquisitions, based on the man Jalen Brunson, which we talked about. But how are you feeling right now? How have you been?
Thanks for having me. First of all, it's always a pleasure to be here and talk Knicks with you. And how am I feeling? I mean, I think I'm finally getting for the first time in a long, long time the kind of feelings of the Knicks are good and they're like sustainably good and they're making good decisions across the board. Like the front office with Rose is just doing, it just seems to be nailing every move he's making. And that's exciting. And it's time. It's been too long. I would have even argued like the Melo Knicks when they had like Jason Kidd that 1 year, was such a flash in the pan that it barely had time to really enjoy it or recognize that it was anything, and then it was gone. So, speaking of which, by the way, did you notice that Melo said something to the effect that like he didn't demand a trade to the Knicks from Denver? Did you see that little soundbite?
I did see that. Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to watch it and exactly see what he said. I want to make sure that the aggregation
Right.
wasn't taken out of context and all those things. But yeah, what can you share on that?
Well, I mean, I just remember that D'Antoni team before Melo got there was really, really fun and deserved to stay together and didn't. I always felt like I was troubled that they ripped it all apart to get Melo and then kind of the Frankenstein monster of stitching together random players together to try and cobble something together that was okay for like a year. Well, it was too bad. They were young. D'Antoni had them in his offense spread and like, causing all sorts of havoc. I'm trying to remember who was the non-shooting forward in that team that was like good for them. I don't know. I'll think of his name. Anyway, everyone's yelling at me now, I'm sure. But and even like before Jeremy Lin, like there was still like it was a really good, fun team. So, but here we are. It took a while. It probably since the '90s against the Bulls and all those years where they and beyond that, like, I guess 1999 when they got to the finals. Where they finally feel like a legitimate, playoff team and someone that could get deeper than the first round, for instance. So, either way, it's exciting to me, and I think that Jalen Brunson, like, luckily, is getting his due in the All Star stuff, and deserves more hype than he's gotten. I think he's that good.
Yeah, most definitely. And you hit the nail in terms of the feeling is so different now in terms of the sustainability of this, and the future, the bright future ahead with Brunson since he came on board. It's changed the course of the franchise. Julius Randle came on board, in free agency, coach 2019.
Hmm.
Gave us some consistency along with Tom Thibodeau, but we were still waiting for that next level star as well. But Brunson here, there's been that debate, can he be the lead player? Everyone, Coach Nick's video is in the link, is linked in the chat right now. Check it out if you haven't already. It was a couple of weeks ago now when Brunson and the Knicks were surging 9 in a row. But yeah, it's a great place to start. Coach Jalen Brunson, to start the season, he's at least matched or surpassed my expectations based on last season. He's had a 50-point game. He continues to be really consistent. The three-point shot has gone to another level. What's really stood out to you from Brunson's season, so far?
Well, my favorite part about Brunson's game, honestly, is his post-up game. I think he's the best post-up player in the NBA. He doesn't post up in a normal way where he get a cross screen, get to the low block, he throw it down there, and he goes. he turns his drives into post ups because he's not always getting by his guy and they cut him off. He gets into the lane a little bit and then he gets into all the amazing footwork and he's shifty and I think the best footwork pound for pound as a post player in the league. I'm telling you, I'm going to do a video on this. We'll talk about Jokic, we'll talk about Şengün, we'll talk about Embiid, all those guys. But I'll just give you the quick the synopsis or the answer first. Is the best player is him. He is going to be the guy who I'm going to nominate as the best post up player. I think that what came out of that video, though, and we're still seeing it even now, is the frustration of Tibbs's lineups, where Brunson never has shooters around him. At most, he has like one, and then he'll have three non-shooters a lot of the time. A lot of the time. It wouldn't kill him to have two shooters around, and he could be the third, I guess. And then you have, but I want to see four shooters around Brunson. They got to somehow figure out a way where we talked before we started record the show. Maybe like if it's OG playing the five, they need to figure out a way to get more spacing and then easier shots. It's not going to happen when Randall comes back either, because now you're going to know Randall's going to play. They'll probably have Hartenstein there next to him, so that's already two guys who aren't going to stretch the floor. I'm not even sure Randall's 3-point percentage had been in the mirage, it seems like, and it's back to where kind of we thought it was going to be. And I don't think he's going to have a lot of gravity there. So it's just frustrating for me to some degree, even though I'm really excited about the Knicks and what they can do. It's frustrating that like he can't get any spacing around Brunson. And then I'm going to say I don't know anything because their offensive rating is extremely high, extremely elite. And I can't for the life of me figure out exactly how they're sustaining that.
Yeah, it's most certainly a mixture of things. Brunson's gravity to the rim, and you mentioned his post-up game. Coach, he's pulling a lot of gravity. But Julius has started to draw a lot of doubles this season as well, despite the 3-point shooting that's dropped. And of course, it's become more of a struggle with Randall out. Brunson's had to work even harder to create shots. And we had a good sample of the OG experiment, which sent us catapulted the Knicks on a 9-game win streak. Him and DiVincenzo in the corners was the best spacing we've seen in years, as you said, Coach. But we really wanted to see more of that. And then OG Anunoby, it was game to game with elbow inflammation, and then it becomes, a scope, cleanup, which is going to set to have him back, around about a week or two after All-Star break, approximately. And so, yeah, we're really looking forward to that. DiVincenzo, coach, has really stepped up and helped the Knicks offensively around Brunson as well. And we're getting really good production out of, the big men from Isaiah early when Mitch went down. He's extremely efficient around the rim. And Precious Achua has also really stepped up, recently as well. So, yeah, it's been a combination of things. But offensively, the trick is the Knicks gobble up rebounds, Coach. They'll continue to dominate the glass. Even though Mitch went down, Isaiah really, we have not even missed a beat with that. And that's kind of how we beat Cleveland in the first round last season.
Right. Now I'm almost. I have to get my hat back on. Remember how that series played out, but because that was a little bit surprising, right? Cleveland was on the upswing, and by the way, watch out because they're the hottest team in the league pretty much right now. No one's talking about them, and they're just not mowing their opponents down.
You should do a video on them if you haven't.
I want to do a video. I'm a little bit worried. I don't know if people are going to watch that one. But I got to figure out a hook to get people in because I don't know if Cleveland's going to have a lot of eyeballs. You know what I mean? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has, and look, all credit to Cleveland. Yeah, we'll talk about the NBA a little bit later in the show as well. But yeah, Tom Thibodeau has also brought back a lot of consistency. I think, and I kept saying it in the off-season, Coach. A lot of teams have overhaul, but the Knicks brought back, your Brunsons, your Randalls, your Mitches, your Hartensteins as well, your Josh Harts, who was a big acquisition last season. But then they've sprinkled in, a higher volume, more efficient 3-point shooter, DiVincenzo. So we're on pace for 50 wins. If the Knicks can win 17-10 in the next 27 games, they'll reach 50 wins for the first time since that Melo year that you said. And I've gone through the schedule. There's 3 games against the Bulls. There's games against the Pistons, the Raptors. I think there's 2 or 3 games against Philly. You would think without Joel Embiid. So it's not really a stretch to think the Knicks will go 17-10 to reach 50 wins, right? Which really could have us in the fourth seed or the third even. As we see on screen, Coach, the Knicks are in fourth. We're only 2 games back of the Bucks in third, and only half a game ahead of the Sixers in fifth. So, what's your kind of reading and projection in terms of the Knicks in fourth now?
Yeah,
Um, Assumingly they're getting people back. Do you think the fourth is very likely? Third possibility? Second?
I think a lot of that mid tier on the upper part of the Eastern Conference is up for grabs, right, between those teams. I mean, are the Cleveland Cavaliers for real as being second, 6 games back only, and then with a nice cushion in front of the Knicks, the Sixers, and the Pacers? I feel bad for the Sixers because obviously they're not a fifth ranked team in the East, right? They are top 2 or 3 minimum with Embiid. Do we know when Embiid's coming back? Is there any information about that? I can't picture in my mind.
Yeah. So what I heard was a six. Meniscus can be somewhere between 6 to 8.
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume. So yeah, that's gonna push it to at least late March.
Yeah, it's rough. They're going to drop farther at that point. So there's no question fourth is really in their grasp. It's theirs to have. The real concern here, if I'm looking at this right, because I'm trying to remember when I did the actual video, they're 25th in defensive rating. Is that? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the last 10 games. I forgot. Let me do the whole season because it didn't sound right. So right now the Knicks are ninth, the top 10. So that's important. Although it's interesting to wrap your head around that. In the last 10 games, they've really been struggling to play defense. I suppose it has a lot to do with, OG being out and being shorthanded. Hartenstein's been out as well, I believe, right? For how long?
Hartenstein.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's set to return basically right after the All-Star break.
Okay. So that'll go back to where they were, which is the top 10. So that's good. So I see no reason why they won't sustain what they're doing. And on that pace for, 50 wins is, I think, a 60% winning percentage, which is where they are right now. The only question is there a lull in the schedule? Can they grab a few more? Can they get to 65% over the last, the rest of the season and then, leapfrog a little bit? I doubt it. I feel pretty strongly they'll probably get kind of, right in that fourth spot, which is not bad. They'll be home to start the playoffs. So that'll be good. And then in the second round, then you have, it's a lot of, it'll be a lot of interesting things and who they're matching up with, the coaching wise as well. Is it time to talk about the coaching and the playing time and all those things that is in everyone's mind, I imagine?
Yeah, chime in. But I'll just quickly add, I've got question marks on Boston too. Not saying the Knicks are set to beat them or anything, but on their day, like we've seen, I think they do fall in love with the jump shot,
Yeah.
as well. And if the Knicks' MO is to be really physical, have Mitch and Hartenstein back, that's their chance. I think if Kristaps is a bit unhealthy.
And I also think that people forgot, like a couple of years ago, the referees were calling the regular season games kind of like a playoff games, and there was a lot more physical then, and that caused a little bit of an uproar. But I think everybody liked watching those games, and I wish they'd go back to that. But at the very least, we have to remember that they are going to allow more contact when the playoffs start, and that it will play into the Knicks' hands, and it probably won't play into the Celtics' hands. I don't think that they're going to like a lot of that, especially a lot of the shooters don't. And in fact, when I'm watching now, and I remember when I was growing up, when you play against a good shooter who got hot, you'd have to put him on his seat. You'd have to give him a hard foul, disrupt that rhythm that he's in, and that will help, help to have him miss some shots. And I think people have forgotten that. And there's ways to do it. We're not hurting anybody, but you kind of just take a good, strong foul, and that might get them mentally out of it a little bit, and that's all you need. So the Knicks certainly have that, and with the Tom Thibodeau coach team, the defense is always going to be on point. The rotations are going to be right there. I believe I showed in the video some examples of that where they anticipate really well, and that just indicates to me that they're a team that focuses on this. Whenever they have a practice or a walkthrough, they are going to pay attention to defense. Not every NBA team does that. They might say, well, we only have 45 minutes today to do something, and we're only going to do offense. The Knicks, to me, strike me as a team that they're still going to do their 25 minutes of defense and rotation drills no matter what, even if the offense is going to suffer because it's not as creative as it could be.
Yeah, and I think just kind of previewing, any playoff matchup, I feel like consistency would help the Knicks again, coach. Their roster is very similar to last year's playoff run. You're going to have your guys like Mitch, your Hartensteins, your Randalls, Brunson, Harts, all the guys that were in the trenches against the Cavs and the Heat.
Hmm.
last season. So I think they'll relish and thrive in a in that environment again. And that's yeah, you're spot on about the refereeing. That's one of the reasons the Knicks were able to win against Cleveland. They were physical on the glass. I mean, Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, just were not a factor in that series. Mitchell Robinson arguably had his best moments as a New York Knick in his whole career as well. And that's the prevailing thought in Knicks fans' minds. That Mitch can really give us an advantage in that area. But yeah, Hartenstein's come on leaps and bounds. We were talking just off air. You've seen him, when he was in LA a little bit, and give us a few words on his impact, and also Precious Achua. Did you have any thoughts on his days in Miami and in Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised. I kind of want to check real quick how many minutes he's getting right now, but I am willing to guarantee that he will not get the same kind of minutes once the playoffs start and Tibbs completely closes off his rotations and plays 7 or 8 guys. So Precious has always been a guy who's intriguing, right, and shows a lot of promise. And that I will not deny that, but you also see some of the more boneheaded plays you're going to see as well, turnovers and stuff like that are just like, what are you doing? What's going on here? And mixed in, right, with all the good stuff, it's all the other stuff too. So you never know what you're going to get. And to me, I think Tibbs is going to do his best to try and chisel off whatever he can of the warts of his game as best as he can in the next 25 to 30 games whatever's left. But I think he'll have a very short leash for playing time for Precious in the playoffs. But there's going to be foul trouble, and there's going to be a moment, I bet you, where he'll come in and he could shift the game, with his energy and the block shot. At some point he was spacing the floor. I don't think he's doing that now, right? In my mind's eye, I haven't seen him with the Knicks doing that, right?
Sorry, say that again.
I remember at some point he was shooting some threes and finding some success, but in Toronto, but not now. Let me just see here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he's
he
not
hit.
really taking them, and he's not making them. So
Yeah, he's shooting a couple corner shots, but he hit one of two the other night. Yeah, nothing that's going to be bankable. But yeah, I agree with you with the playoff rotation. There's been a lot of talk, Knicks fans, being hyped up in terms of, okay, when everybody's back, who's going to be in, who's going to be out, and people are saying Precious is deserving minutes the way he's performing. But as you said, the playoffs are just something completely different. Yeah, Tibbs has to have full faith in you, and an 8-man rotation could be likely.
right. I mean, he's getting 25 minutes a game right now, primarily because of the injuries. He'll play 10 minutes. He'll play 11 minutes. He'll get a run. He'll get a couple of small runs in each half, and that's fine. And again, there might be a moment where an ankle or a foul trouble or whatever, and he gets a little extended run and he can make an impact. But just don't count on it for every game, in every series. Hartenstein on the opposite, on the other end though, is a guy who, I mean, you remember when Draymond Green gets a shot to play because David Lee goes down, whenever that was. I'm old enough to remember that. And without that, Draymond Green would never have gotten the shot. I don't think at all. He never would have gotten. He wouldn't have been a starter. He wouldn't have been where he is now. And Hartenstein could very well be the same way, right? Without Mitchell Robinson going down, they wouldn't have sort of been forced to play him. And it's weird because he might look athletically a little bit weird. Like he's got kind of rounded shoulders. He's got a pretty good physique and strong arms and shoulders, but there's something about the movement pattern that might make people feel like, oh, he's not really smooth or that kind of thing. And then in reality, you watch the guy play. He can handle the ball. He can pass the ball. He has the ability to score from a little farther out than 8 or 10 feet. And so all of a sudden he's giving you things that like Mitchell Robinson cannot give you on the offensive end, which is important. And he can do a lot of the things that Robinson can do defensively. He's got a really good spatial awareness. He knows how to rotate and help. He's got good timing on that, good body control to not foul. And so all those things have been, I imagine, a revelation to Tibbs, and all because the guy that he liked the most or whatever, who was starting the most, just went down with an injury and for a long time. Unfortunately for Robinson, this might be one of those Wally Pip things, which you maybe don't know. You know the Wally Pip? You know who that is? When what's his face? Oh my God, who did he get replaced by? The Iron Man. Anyway, the first baseman for the Yankees, the other sport that I don't know about, but I'll somebody in the comments tell me who the heck it was. But anyway, Wally Pipp was the guy who was starting, and then he had, had a little cold. He didn't want to play that day, and Lou Gehrig, not Lou Gehrig, maybe it was Lou Gehrig, took his spot and he never got it back. So that could happen with Robinson. But that said, it's also an embarrassment of riches because having Robinson come off the bench and giving you 20 minutes a game is awesome for them.
Yeah, definitely. There's been two guys that have been clear beneficiaries of a greater role, and that doesn't always happen in the NBA where you get that chance. But there are so many players scattered across the league where you kind of wonder, okay, if we were to give these guys more of an opportunity, and that's why I understand why players change teams, because
Yeah.
they may not be disgruntled, but they believe in themselves. We see Golden State, Podjemensky's stepping up, and Austin Reeves was once upon a time just a small volume player, and he took his chance. I mean, Alex Caruso, his currency's just gone up around the league. But yeah, for the Knicks this season, it's been Dante DiVincenzo in greater sample who's stepped up and averaging, a much greater clip, in the absence of Randall, and helping to carry the offense, but with greater 3-point shooting volume as well. And also, as we said, man, Isaiah Hartenstein, who's really shown that, yeah, he can be the starting center on a top four team. And it's kind of having us nervous as we spoke before coming on air. He's going to be a free agent
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and that really, really sucks if all they can sign him for is a mid-level because someone's going to offer him a lot more money than that. Yes, Lou Gehrig, almost. There's a G at the end, but that's exactly what it was. Thank you, Christian. But yes, that is. Wait, what were we just talking about?
Dante DiVincenzo and Isaiah
Okay,
both,
Isaiah. Yeah.
yeah, taking their chance basically.
Oh, but like someone like PJ Tucker, right? He gets traded to the Clippers and doesn't get off the bench, and now he's misbehaving, acting out, and they sent him home. Who else did they send home? It was two players, right?
Bones.
Oh yeah, Bones, who's already been languishing, and that Bones was also a trade, right? They didn't have a choice; they just happened to be thrown in as a thing. That said, I don't know if PJ Tucker has much left anyway, but besides his pride, that sucks. He was a starter on like some really good playoff teams very recently, and now he doesn't get 1 minute off that bench. That is tough, man. It is really, really tough. I feel for them, but it's also, the other side is great when you do get that shot, when Caruso's get that shot or DiVincenzo, and again, the Villanova guys seem to be having a lot of fun. They lost one, I guess. Too bad for Arcidiacono, but the other guys seem to be like creating something there. And Jay Wright might be one of the only college coaches that I really respect in terms of player development, and it shows in the players in the NBA.
Yeah, Knicks fans are quietly hoping we get the other big Villanova cat, Mikal Bridges, who there's never going to be a trade between the Knicks and Brooklyn, but somewhere along the line in the future, I think that might happen. But yeah, we have to hit on another player who is a three-time All-Star coach, and then we'll talk about some of the acquisitions that the Knicks have brought in mid-season. But yeah, the third-time All-Star, Julius Randle, and the way I see this season so far, coach, is Randle has improved in a number of areas. His processing of the game, he was making better decisions before getting injured in terms of swinging the ball and kicking it out when the double was coming. And it was also he was doing a better job at keeping his head focused in the game in terms of less blow-ups than last season as well. But unfortunately, as we said before, the 3-point ball, the volume has come down significantly. But in giving Randle, some credit, I think for Brunson's season and for him to be, a first-time All-Star, right? That doesn't happen if also Randle's not there because Randle was commanding a lot of doubles, and it was really allowing Jalen Brunson to be, equally, the one A, one B on any given night. Um, so yeah, with Julius Randle and better signs that he's reading the game better. He's only 29. Uh, have you seen any examples of players, processing of the game and all stars, maybe not improving in abilities, but improving in, decision making under pressure and that?
Sure. I mean, it's funny. I was prepping a video about him earlier in the year. I was trying to wrap my head about what I wanted to do with the Knicks, and I was trying to do an OG video. And then I don't know, the footage was not that interesting to me. And when I finally was able to hammer on like what was going on with Brunson, like that was more interesting. But what I did come out of that with the OG footage when he first got traded was the Randall conundrum at the time, which I still think is an issue. I know that it's been better this year, but you would still see this year Jekyll and Hyde, like in the same game, in the same quarter, where he would be this magnificent player who is drawing double teams, making the right the pass and the right read, opening up things for everybody else, and then being a dominant guy around the basket who nobody can stop, and then in the open court too, and then he'd just go into like a weird funk, and he would just take these long step back mid range contested shots and like just sort of pee on everyone's parade. But I will say it's less than it was now. And here's my theory, and I want maybe you can help me because you're watching them even much closer than I am. But my take on it is that it's mental with him, where maybe it's a personality thing where he's just kind of hot and cold, and he never kind of know when you walk in the door what he's going to be like, for instance. So in my mind, what I've seen on the TV, like just little things that I'm trying to notice in the background, I think that the Villanova guys realized this and said, this guy is just kind of hot and cold a lot of time. Let's just try and keep him positive as much as we possibly can. Let's screw around with him. Let's play out. We'll keep him happy. We'll joke. We'll make him laugh. Do you see that as much as I kind of was picking up on in what I was seeing as far as like it was a concerted effort by all those guys, Josh and Brunson, to sneak up on him when he's doing an interview on TV. All those things to me indicated that they had made a decision. We're going to have to keep this guy in a positive frame of mind as much as possible.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, well, first credit to Randall. I think he's come into this season more focused. I think making a deeper playoff run last year, being a back-to-back All-Star, I think it's just part of it was just natural maturation. But yeah, I could see, some things that you've mentioned in terms of the camaraderie, the closeness of the current roster, being brought back and him feeling a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, without having met Randall, I kind of get the gauge that he's more of an older soul compared to the rest of the roster. There's not much of an age gap between him and Brunson, a couple of years, but they're kind of got the click with Josh Hart and the Villanova guys. They like to fool around a bit. Whereas I felt like Randall had a closer bond to the Reggie Bullocks, the Elfrid Paytons, and the Alec Burkses when they were with the Knicks, the Bobby Portises. So I feel like Randall, being around a bit earlier with Kobe those days, I think Randall did kind of grow up a little bit quicker coming into the league as an 18-year-old. So I feel like, yeah, it's a really good sign that, him and Brunson had just hit it off from day one. And I think that's the most important thing, Coach, that they both have each other's back. There seems to be a lot of respect between him and Brunson, and I've been really impressed with how they've both kind of fed off each other this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. I was thinking of a trade. What the trade could be before the deadline, and I was like, well, they could get Randall. Could they get like two players for Randall that could just sort of spread the floor better, get some rebounding? Did I have a good point? But then the funny thing was they could have traded LeBron for Randall and done something like that, right? Because LeBron supposedly there was talk of that, and like maybe the Warriors were going to maybe try and get him, which I would think would be a mistake times 10. But yeah, if they can continue to get the Randall that we see at the best parts of Randall, then yeah, they really do have something. But that said, we just need more data. We have to see what Bojan looks like with everybody there, with OG there. We have to see like Burke as well and I always do this. Alec Burks, not. Do you ever wonder if Alec Burks has met Alex Burke?
I have, yep, yeah.
I wonder if he's met that person.
Yeah, Coach, we even get the announcers mix it up every now and then as well. It's such a tongue twister.
Yeah, Alec, I can get. I can Alec, and then and it's Burks because there's the S at the end there, right? That's the way to do it. I mean, I met him, and I literally had to ask him if I'd do an interview, and had to just sort of say his name 10 times before I walked up to him. But at any rate, and we know what he can do. Again, I would be a little bit surprised if he gets a ton of minutes under Tibbs, especially when everyone's healthy. But that's why Bojan to me is the key. And we have a couple games to see, and he puts the ball on the floor. He can spread it and shoot the three. He's definitely not the same Bojan he was a few years ago, athletically. He's definitely older, slower, doesn't have lift, all those things. And I'm a little bit worried about that. But he still can give you something, and he's also that really tough, battle-tested guy who, when playing in the EuroLeague, or sorry, the FIBA stuff, really makes you impervious to pressure, I think. So he's that guy that they great pickup for them for that. But it's going to be hard to figure out until everybody gets healthy, really what they have, and they're not going to have a lot of time to gel. That's the other problem when you're mixing in, this many new players. And OG is still a new player. We still have to consider him new. It's a tough thing because they probably don't practice much at all. Although knowing Tibbs, they probably practice more than anybody else. But that's really where I have a little bit of pause because sometimes it takes longer than what they have to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, no doubt. And I want to kind of throw this into the conversation as we talk about the acquisitions, OG and Bogey. Yeah, I got the roster coach on the screen. Um, assuming, yeah, a lot of talk is Tibbs is going to go down to 8. And then some people saying, oh, look, it's so stacked that he has to go 9. What are your general thoughts on the ideal rotation, even if we're just looking at other teams? What do you think is optimal going through a deep playoff run, and assuming you've got to win 3-4 rounds,
Yeah.
and the squad's likely going to be banged up, heading into the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, looking at the pictures here, I pretty much can already tell you. I think we all sort of know, like obviously the top group is going to probably play minimum of 38 minutes each, right? 38, 39 probably. I would say Josh Hart is going to get run. Bojan's going to get a lot of run. Precious, well, I think will end up getting his 10, 12 minutes, maybe a couple runs, 6-minute runs in each half. And
Or
then,
if Mitch is back, do you think Mitch
oh yeah,
replaces Precious?
is he back?
But this clear sort of talk that he will be back before the playoffs, but we still have to wait.
Yeah. If he's healthy and he's playing, then yeah, you can slot him in for probably 18, maybe, right? It's tough. And he's going to probably want his job back. He might want his starting job back. And obviously when you watch Hartenstein with him, like that's
Yeah,
not realistic, I
I
don't
don't
think. Yeah.
just quickly, coach. Yeah, based on the injury, and I think he's had either a screw or a bolt in his leg, or I think whatever that injury was, it's not normally an injury where you come back and play big minutes.
Okay,
So
good.
unless he's back with at least 3 weeks before the end of the season, I could easily see him coming back off the bench.
For sure, for sure. And they should. I mean, I think Hartenstein's the guy you want to start with now. He's just got more varied game on the offensive end and can give you a lot of what he can do defensively. So, I wouldn't expect him to get a ton of minutes. So I think Hart would be the guy who's going to get the first guy off the bench for the backcourt. And I would imagine Bojan's going to be a guy that Tibbs is going to like. Ultimately. And then with Burks, that's the next question. I don't know. He's a wild card to me. Perhaps they put him out there. Let's feel it out. If he's hot and he's kind of making some shots, great. We'll give him an extra run. And if he's not, boom, get the hell out of there and let's get somebody to play. Maybe more defense, I suppose, in that end, if that makes sense. But
I think
that's where I'm leaning toward right now.
Yeah, coach, I could see Burke still being a predicted starting 8 guy or first 8, because I think he's going to trust him more than Deuce McBride.
Yeah.
I think Burks will be the backup point guard in a playoff series. Hart will definitely be in, as you said, so that's the 7th guy. I could
Yeah.
see Precious stealing Bojan's minutes. I really could see that. Bojan might be that guy. It's just like you said, you ride it if he's hot. If he's not, you get Precious in there as the backup 4. But the thing is that a lot of Knicks fans don't like, coach, is Tibbs has been deploying Hart as a backup 4. And he's gone on record in an interview and saying, look, I'm not a 4. But now we have Precious. So hopefully that doesn't happen. And as we see Karif's comment as well, Precious has to get minutes.
Yeah, 15. What did I say? 10. Okay, I mean, 10 is close to 15, I suppose, or maybe, let's see how that goes. But we know he just shortens those rotations. So Taj is not going to take off his warm up. I don't think Jericho Sims is going to take off the warm up. Yeah, Deuce would probably not get much either. So yeah, it's going to be a short rotation, which is fine, I suppose, in the playoffs. The problem though is he's playing this rotation now. And here we are with all these injuries that are a really problem because some of these things can linger. Hamstrings can linger for a long time. And it's not like we can pretend, oh, it's not the playing time or whatever, but it's like every one of Tibbs' teams have this issue every year and all the time. And by the way, the one thing I've noticed about Tibbs this year, though, is I think I've caught him laughing during a game, literally laughing, not even just smile. And the smile was enough to be like shocking. But then I think I saw him laughing during a game once. Perhaps he's in on this whole thing about keeping Randall in a positive frame of mind. I don't know, but man, it's a sight for sore eyes because I would say when I'm watching those games, like, would it kill him to smile a little bit, and encourage the team a little bit more? We talked about this a lot in the past. So maybe he's moving on toward that as well, but he certainly hasn't figured out that in the modern era and the way we play basketball now, I know Michael Jordan would play 40 minutes a night in the regular season for 82 games, but we're just not in that era anymore, and guys are breaking down when you get past 36. And I just wish he could figure out a way to manage this and still feel like he can get wins. I think that's the issue, right? Is he must not feel like they can win any games without riding Brunson for 37, 38 minutes in the game. What is the average now? Is it less than that? Brunson's at 36. So
Yeah,
I would love to see Brunson at 34. You know what I mean? Shave a couple minutes here and there, and then and still win these games.
yeah. Well, I think he's been a little spoiled, coach, as we continue to talk about the acquisition. RJ quickly, the squad was very durable. Last year we had a pretty decent run with injuries, and he got in that habit. Julius Randle is an Iron Man and was
Yeah.
like basically leading the league in never taking nights off. Well, aside from Mikal Bridges, who kind of short circuits the system a little bit. But what I was going to say is Tibbs' direct quote for you, coach. He says, "Winning is more fun than fun is fun." So the reason he's been having pretty some fun moments this season is we've been winning at a really good rate. That 9-game winning streak, I think, is when you really saw Tibbs kind of lighten up a little bit. And Leon Rose got him the man that he's been adoring for so long, OG Anunoby, a guy who's plug and play. He doesn't demand the ball, is going to sit there in the corner, doesn't have to integrate him like RJ and quickly. So I think, Tibbs is this is the deepest roster. Well, I'll put it to you, and Buzzer Beater, who's actually in the chat, brought this up. He feels like this Knicks current squad is a 2.0 version of the Chicago Bulls with Derrick Rose as your Jalen Brunson, uh, Randall as your Carlos Boozer type, OG as your Luol Deng, Hartenstein Mitch as your Joakim Noah, and then DiVincenzo as maybe your who was their two guard?
Well,
Was
they
it
have the Argentinian guy.
Heinrich, Kirk Heinrich or
Oh,
something?
Heinrich, or I would say Nocioni, maybe in that era. At some point, he was there. He was tough for a little while. He was a tough guard. Remember him? I remember from Argentina. Yeah, I mean that's a blueprint that he likes, and those guys all sort of mirror each other. I could follow that for sure. And we know what happened to those teams too, right? I mean, they ran into the Heat buzzsaw, and that's rough. But they also they got beat up too, and went down with injuries as well. Which however that happened, they all played heavy minutes. But it's nice to think. So, by the way, the coaching thing is interesting. You win, so you have fun. Well, what about having fun so you win? That could be a two-way street where if you make it miserable, you might not win as much as you like. And that might be the one thing Tibbs could learn from a little bit and not have it be the results based and actually create the environment you want before the results come into play. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm glad you said that, coach, because one guy I want to talk about is Josh Hart. When he was acquired last season, he was that bundle of energy. He was so happy to be on the squad now. We went on a huge run. He even had that back and forth joke exchange with Tibbs saying, I can go 48 if you want me to. And then we fast forward 12 months, and I said this in the post game last night. Josh Hart last night, his body language was the worst I've seen it since the Nick. Now, I know it's gotten to everybody. It's been really physical. He's been playing way more minutes. He's been playing out of position. but I'm really starting to see him go the other way since being here in the last 12 months, and I think that's been a byproduct of some of Tibbs's use of him. Um, Under overuse, different positions, and yeah, exactly like you alluded to.
Yeah, it's a problem, and it doesn't have to be that way. I know it's his thing and how he likes how he is, his personality, and you could try and pick the right players that can thrive around that, I suppose. But and then his all his Villanova guys can keep him upbeat and whatever. They can try and balance that. But you have to hope that will affect Tibbs a little bit too and get him to lighten up. Maybe it has, but yes. There's no question, and the way Josh Hart plays is every coach would love him, right, and would want to play him as much as possible. And you got to be able to manage that a little bit, because otherwise, that flame can burn out and get beaten up and all sorts of things. I love what Steve Kerr had described him in the World Cup when they have the 50-50 guys. Well, Josh Hart is a 30-70 guy. He gets the balls that like no one can get. So you got to find ways to manage that better, or they tune you out eventually, and that's what he's seen happen in everywhere else he's been. So maybe this is the chance for him to, finally make a little bit of a leap, trust the team a little bit more, perhaps, and then and just find a way to channel that positive energy better.
Yeah, I think Hart will continue to thrive. I think playoffs will kick him into gear. I think it's just been a grind recently, and we can't forget Hart was the fourth most active tenured player in the NBA to never make a playoffs before last season.
Oh.
So yeah, he was 27, 28, and the fourth most active current NBA player to have never made a playoff berth, and last year changed that. So I think Hart's just been used to I guess going through some frustrations with losing, and the Knicks have been losing a little bit recently. But we got a great question, from our friend Buzzer Beater, who's a huge fan of yours as well. Always watches B-Ball Breakdown, and everybody, where to find it. The link's in the chat right now. There's a great video on Jalen Brunson deserving to be in the All-Star and the MVP conversation. From your vantage point, what brought that about? And what do you feel about this 65 game rule for the MVP?
Well, wait, it's a question. What brought about the MVP discussion about Brunson?
Brunson, yeah.
I mean, listen, they're winning. He is the reason why they're winning. I mean, Randall is there too, but like the guy is the engine. And so when you are winning and you are the best player in the team, then you should have MVP discussion, without question. Now, the way he's doing it, I mean, we don't know what the MVP is supposed to award, as far as I can tell. Is it the best player in the league? Is it the guy who is the most dominant? Is it the most valuable for that team? I've never been able to quite understand exactly what it is. I don't know if anybody does. It turns into a narrative sometimes. And if that's the case, then let's give Brunson some of that narrative. He deserves it without question, because it's like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders and what he has to do. Partly because of how he described, there's no spacing around him, so he's got to create a lot of the advantages on his own from nothing, and that's too bad. I mean, they're trying. You'll see them have the 5-out initial alignment. But it very quickly gets clogged with at least a couple of defenders in the paint, literally, as Brunson wants to come around to attack, and it will never get a layup. You know what I mean? He'll never get to the basket because there's at least one person as a help defender in his way at all times. So at any rate, that's why he deserves it. It is a monumental task he's doing, just carrying these people, a lot of the time. Now, that said, I don't want to take anything away from DiVincenzo, who's been terrific, and Hartenstein and all those guys. They are contributing a lot as well. Now, the 65-game rule is interesting because I don't think anyone realized at the time, or maybe they did, that it would put this weird pressure on players like Embiid to play when they were hurt. And we don't want that, right? I would almost think that, I guess the problem is in a perfect world, players would not be concerned about individual accolades, right? Like, I'm here to play. And if I'm hurt, I'm not going to put the team in jeopardy for doing that, right? And so it becomes a little bit selfish that he maybe put himself out there in harm's way, knowing he wasn't healthy because he's got to get to some artificial number, right? And that's not good either. And so I don't know what the answer is. I do feel like there probably should be a minimum number. Like you got to play some amount of games to be considered the MVP, right? But once you announce it and you put a firm rule, then you get stuff like happens with Embiid, and that's really too bad. But that said, it's all because he wants this individual award, and
Yeah,
that's probably the bigger problem. Now, is it tied into millions and millions of dollars that they will be awarded if they get the MVP? Probably. And so that becomes a different whole story, right? Because now you're talking about their livelihood, their retirement, all those things is all part of that, and I totally get that. So it's a problem, and I suppose maybe the answer is not a 65 game minimum. I don't know. What are people saying in your neck of the woods?
yeah. I think people feel like it's a little harsh. I feel like there needs to be some limit, in my opinion, because it's not to penalize those that like you said, unfortunately, might suffer an injury. It's more to recognize and elevate those players that were able to play more than that. It's supposed to be the most esteemed, award available individually. And I really feel like, yeah, players that play 65, generally make the biggest impact, on their team. Of course, players get hot and they could be the MVP for a 30 game stretch, but then they might miss the following 50. So I feel like, yeah, you're kind of never going to please everybody, but yeah, maybe make it 60, maybe make it 60, not 65. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was thinking like it has to be. It couldn't be less than 60, I imagine, right? But it's got to be 60. Yeah, because I remember in the past before they had this, yeah, there were guys who played 50 some games, and you're like, yeah, that's not enough. It just wasn't enough, and it sucks, and it's too bad they got hurt, and no one wants to be hurt. But yeah, you got to have enough of a body of work in an individual season to merit that. Now, you could maybe not specify that and just have the voters keep that in mind, and then they can decide how many games in their own minds that is enough. And then that you wouldn't have that pressure, but the cat's out of the bag at this point, right? So I don't know if we're going to be able to get it back in.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky, And then there's a whole debate like, do you continue to award the same player 3, 4 years in a row, or do you kind of get swayed by swinging it? Um, yeah, appreciate the questions, everybody, and the super chat buzzer beater in the building as well. Another great question, buzzer beater asked, why does the media keep mentioning Brunson's height? And that leads me to a question I wanted to sort of add to that, Coach, is bigger picture stuff. You said ideally Brunson with all these shooters. Do you really feel like if that's the case, can Brunson get the New York Knicks to the finals if he's the best player?
That's an interesting question. Because part of the thing about like an improbable run to the finals generally would be that you got hot as a team, right? And you started making threes. The Heat did that. I don't know if it was last year they did that, but like maybe the first run they get to the finals, I think that's what happened. So it's like that's the easiest way to kind of, because here's the thing: are they a finals team? I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to say that right now that they're as good to be a finals team, right? But could they get there if they got hot? Like, okay, maybe because they have some defensive principles there that really help them, and they could get hot and do it. But you can't get hot if you don't have enough shooters. Period, right? If you keep playing Josh Hart and Hartenstein and Precious together or whatever, there's no way to get hot because they're not going to shoot them, or Randall as well. So that's the interesting question. So, if you want to put yourself in a position to get hot like that, well, then you got to have the shooters that can do it and space the floor. You get all the ancillary benefits of the spacing, it drives to the basket, all those things. So that's the issue. Is I don't know. And by the way, another interesting thing about this, to talk about Tibbs again, this coaching style. To get hot, you want to kind of be in a flow state. Right, that's generally what people describe when the bucket looks really big, or it just feels like everything's slow mo. And depending on how you communicate as a coach, you can affect the chemical, efficacy, or the way the chemicals work in your brain. And using a lot of sort of negative stuff tends to lead to your brain not functioning in that flow state. And so you're not going to get hot because of that, right? So what you think you're doing as a coach in terms of getting them to play hard and kind of focus is really not letting them get hot, and then you're not going to get to play above your head and maybe make a surprise, appearance in the conference finals or beyond. So that's the problem. I feel like this is kind of a Tibbs rip session, even though I know the guy. I've had an amazing conversation with him. He's the nicest guy in the world in that context, and he's probably we'll put him in the top five, right, of NBA coaches right now. But the communication effort always tends to always rub me wrong in a way that I wonder if there's some semblance of holding that team back even a little bit because of the communication methods he uses. And again, in the modern era, when we're talking about 3-point shooting, you would never want to intentionally in a game mess with the potential to get into a flow state and get hot. And that's what a lot of the coaches who use how he communicates do. And they don't maybe understand that. They just assume, oh, these are professionals. That's not going to affect them. But you know what? It could, and that I wouldn't want to play with that. I wouldn't want to screw around with that kind of the brain like that, knowing what we know now, with modern information.
Yeah, most definitely. And in terms of, I'm not sure if you specifically talked about the Brunson's height, and the
Oh,
difficulty. You said he's the best post player in the NBA, which is that in itself is extraordinary to be 6'1", 6'2", and the best post player. Is there any player that even reminds you of is Brunson once in a generation in terms of that skill set?
at that size, yeah. I mean, I can't. I mean, of course, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but I don't think so because he's so shifty as well. So he's quick and he's strong and he's got kind of like a nice combination. And he has the Hakeem Olajuwon footwork, right, where he will go off of one foot on step throughs, which gives you a huge advantage because you can get you can travel more distance away from your defender on that one. And then he's got the beautiful sort of turnaround fadeaway shot as well. I would suppose Kobe might be the guy who you would compare him to, or like Michael a little bit. He might be like sort of shifty or quick twitch more than Kobe was on that end. But again, does not have the lift, can't elevate like Kobe and Michael could. So that's what's even more impressive about it, right? Because it's that much harder by an order of magnitude because he's probably like 5 inches shorter than those guys minimum. And he probably doesn't even see the rim on a lot of his shots. It doesn't matter. He knows where it is and knows how to make those shots. We saw how his dad trained him, and all those back and forth shots. Like, he doesn't even see the rim at that point, I guess. And then we heard as a kid hanging around the NBA where he would just mimic all those players' moves. And at that era, there were so many post-up players that did all that stuff that was who he was mimicking. It makes sense to me perfectly that that's how he would do it. I would hope we would see more players do this, right? There's no reason why you couldn't turn more of those drives that get cut off into post-ups instead of stuck with your back to the basket, just begging for someone to cut so you can throw it to them.
Yeah, exactly. You said it, and in terms of my reasoning for buzzer beaters question as well is, yeah, when you're only certain height, it's obviously you can't shoot over people all the time. So what's the next best thing? Which is pivot, manipulate, post up and under. And I love what you mentioned because I was going to say that with Rick Brunson, a well drilled young player, fundamentals, Jay Wright, like you said in college, I think he's got all the nucleus and the ingredients growing up to be the Jalen Brunson we see today, right? Everyone's have an impact, on his upbringing, and he's just extremely well drilled as well. Something else that's really unique, coaches, is kind of stature. He's got really thick legs, really thick, strong upper body, and a lot of point guards that size are maybe a little bit more slender, like your De'Aaron Foxes, your Trey Youngs, which maybe not be suitable to be a post up kind of guy.
Absolutely right. I mean, listen, yeah. Anybody in my mind probably should be able to kind of do it and master that if they know and they have a good coaching, I suppose. But yeah, there's a reason why there isn't only one right now, pretty much doing it. I can't think. Are there any small guards besides Brunson who post up like this now? I don't think
Oh,
so.
that's a great question. Look, I really appreciate Jimmy Butler's post-up game. I know he's bigger and taller as well, but yeah, there aren't many two guards like Kobe that and Michael, like you said, that like posting up like
And by
that.
the way, they should. That's the position that should be posting up more. Steph Curry should be posting up. I swear to God. James Harden should be posting up. Those are the guys who would be awesome at it.
Even RJ Barrett, when he was here, I really wanted us to run action where he was in the post a lot because he's bigger than most two guards,
Yeah.
and stronger as well. But Tibbs never had that. He had him on the perimeter. He had him as the floor spacer when he was not a floor spacer.
Right. And and by the way, like I know I had gone back and forth on RJ during his tenure in New York, thinking that as a rookie there was a lot of promise and this was going to be something great if he continued to progress. Didn't really continue to progress, and it ended up being just a fantastic trade. Addition by subtraction. Because there were enough issues with his game offensively that drove me nuts, and to replace that with OG, ends up being a huge difference, as we saw until he hurt his elbow.
Yeah, definitely. We have another super chat. Keep them coming. Appreciate you, chat, rocking out with Coach Nick and myself, the one and only from B-Ball Breakdown. Buzzer Beater's asking, what's up with the refs this season? We had a little exchange about some of the calls against Houston, but yeah, what's on your mind about that?
You're right. Like the one with what's his face, who went he drove into Brunson and knocked him out of the way.
Dylan the villain.
Right. I didn't like that one. I thought that should have been a call. The argument would have been, and I spent a lot of time defending the refs because the defender wasn't in legal guarding position. He wasn't like in front of him and square to the player. But there is part of the rule that says if you overtly veer from your vector toward the basket into the defender, well, then that's an offensive foul. That's what he did. That one was definitely overt.
And a non-B ball play. It's a
Yeah.
second. Anytime you create a secondary action, that's not a B ball play.
Yeah, and because a lot of times we were seeing guys like Beverly pulling up early on Steph, and then MB did it to Wade for Cleveland. Those guys, they are gathering early, or they're gathering off the one instead of the 1-2. They have an extra step, they don't take it because they catch the defense off guard that way, and then they rise up into the shot and they shoot it. Like, those are basketball plays, and people don't think they are because they don't understand the concept of ending the dribble earlier than normal. That play that Brooks did was nothing to do with that. That was just lowering the shoulder, changing your vector 90 degrees to go right into him. So that hurts. I imagine there's a few other ones. And again, what's up with the refs? It's like, yeah, I suppose it's been a problem. And maybe it hasn't been a problem just this year. There could be some issues there. But in the macro sense, they do get 92% of their calls right? They do pretty darn well. But there does seem to be an interesting backlash. I also think that social media puts a magnifying glass we've never had before on these plays, and it might seem like it's worse than ever before, but it's simply just because we didn't have as much concentrated NBA Twitter as we do now. So I'm really sympathetic. It's a hard job. Again, they get it right a lot of the time, like a staggeringly a lot right amount of the time. But I do say that there is some notion of some things being missed that we're not too excited about. The carry, maybe a little bit another one that they had started to clean up, and I was very excited about that last year, and now they're not doing it like they were, and guys are kind of getting away with stuff.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your thoughts on that. If there's one question from me, if there's one thing or a process that you would love to see change or implemented for the betterment of either the results or to make life easier for the refs, such as maybe technology or the better use of the technology, is there anything that you would love to see implemented?
I mean, would you have liked to have had a replay of that foul on Brunson where they gave him the game, at the end of the Rockets? I don't know if more replay is the answer and that's slower or whatever, but at the end of the game it'd be nice. I don't know. Would it be great to have everything exactly right? Like by like some sort of motion capture AI, whatever, and know exactly what happens. Like, I suppose that would probably be the ultimate. They could measure the amount of force put on your arm as you got hit to decide if it was a foul or not, right? That would be interesting, but I don't know if that's possible, and I don't know if there's much you can do beyond that and what we're doing that doesn't make the games interminably long, and add to all this. So that's the only issue. We want the games to be shorter. I think the younger kids really, when I talk to them now, it's like they don't want to watch basketball games because it's too long, right? It literally is just too
Wow.
long. They don't want to deal with it. So That's the problem, which with these replay stuff and the technology, it just makes it take longer.
Yeah, one addition I would love to see is just those people in maybe Secaucus take on a little bit more of a role, such as because I watch a lot of European soccer, and they have the VAR in the off site, and they could be reviewing it, as real referees, and then they just tell the referees, no, we've reviewed it already, we've made the decision. Um, and another thing is maybe like tennis and a Hawkeye, goal line technology for the out of bounds stuff. The amount of times Tibbs has had to use a challenge based on an out of bounds that they missed, and I know the referees only have a certain angle, but yeah,
But I would think that the biggest issue with out of bounds is who hit it last, which is not covered by Hawkeye, right?
yeah, you might be correct.
So
Although
that
I'm
might.
starting to hear players are going to wear cameras now,
Oh wow! I
possibly
mean,
as well. To
because
be
to use Hawkeye for that, you'd have to have something on their hand, like or on their bodies, to know who touched it last. So that seems to be a big one too when they're trying to review, versus just even the stepping out and that or the ball hitting the line. So that is the second, that probably the more important component of that one. I don't know how you solve that other than the replays that you have. So and even the replays aren't always accurate. I mean, we'll see the ones where the guy clearly swipes the ball that way and knocking it out of the guy's hand, right? It's clearly he knocked it out of the person's hand. But if you find one or two frames where it touches the fingernail of the offensive player on the way out, then somehow this wild swipe that happened to get the ball ends up being a turnover. That seems not right either. So it's a conundrum, and I don't know, but they probably are going to need to do something going forward, because I have the feeling that the fans are getting more and more upset, and that's bad.
Yeah, here's one classic old adage: just start from the ground and start with good training. But we don't need any more technology and all that. Just train the referees really, really good. Let the experienced referees spend all of their experience, even if they're not current. Bring them in for seminars, tutorials, etc. And I think share that wisdom. But yeah, no doubt the game is changing. Now, yeah, we'll go a few more minutes. We'll get through some of these last few questions. Buzzer Beater, once again, appreciate you again for the super chat. Coach, we need a video on how to analyze the game like a coach in real time. Oh, that would be something.
I've been threatening to do that for a long time. Um, it would probably be, like, yeah, how I break it down, right? What am I doing? Like, I might not be the most interesting video because you'd be like, filming my back of my head or something when I'm looking at a screen. But yeah, there was no question. Analyzing the game in real time is really, really hard. I love to be in my office when I'm watching games. I can jump back 10 seconds, watch it right away, and really understand. But I know when I'm watching the game live, when I'm there, like the game's over, I'm like, what the heck just happened? I barely could remember anything that happened, right? And yeah, you have to make decisions in real time. By the way, that's where the technology needs to help. The lineups, I feel like that all should be AI right now in real time. You should know exactly who's out there on the other team, who you want to put in, who's tired, who's not. You know what I mean? They have the sensors in the jerseys for that. You would be able to know how to optimize that, because I feel like it's still by the seat of their pants, total gut feeling. As soon as there's a foul trouble, like it knows exactly how to get the best of this player. This player versus the other player with the other four out there. You know what I mean? All those things need to be crunched, and it can't just be by gut feeling. I would want to have an AI be able to predict that better for me, because again, you still see coaches that probably aren't looking at lineup data enough, and are missing opportunities where they could get a lot better play.
That's a great point. Yeah, the sports science thing should continue to really develop. I know, yeah, players wear cameras on them, or GPS tracking and, tracking their hydration and all of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no reason that shouldn't continue. So who's the freshest player when you're making choices. Should I get this guy on? Um,
absolutely.
Outside of Leon Rose, or do you feel like he has a chance to win Executive of the Year? And who else has really impressed you as an executive?
Oh man, he has to win it hands down. Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, Milwaukee, when they brought Damon, it felt good. But
Well, I'm hearing people say Brad Stevens deserves it for getting Drew, getting Derek White, Chris Stapps.
okay, but they didn't get Derek White this year, right? It has to be moves they made for this season, right?
Yep, correct.
Oh, but KP, right? Wait, when did KP come? Last year or
Yeah.
or this
In the
year?
summer. Yeah, in the summer.
Okay, so yeah, that Celtics have an argument, and yeah, and certainly getting Drew, yeah, that's two big moves in there, and look what they're doing, they're killing everybody. So I would suspect that's probably his biggest competition right now. Anybody else? I'm trying to think. Made major moves. Um,
Presti, but not really this year, I guess,
right,
right?
right. So yeah, and they brought Micic in, but then they traded him already, so that didn't work out as well as maybe I thought it would have. But yeah, I think it's probably Leon Rose. I think it's his to lose.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I agree. I think just the combination of them is DiVincenzo for the mid level. He beat out a lot of teams. There was teams offering more money, coach, and
Yeah,
then you bring in you obviously did the swing, the trade mid season with OG Anunoby, and then you won the trade deadline basically essentially for
yeah.
Bogdanovic, yeah, as well.
And then
Yeah,
oh wait, was
yeah.
Hartenstein there
Go
last?
ahead.
And Hartenstein. Oh no, he was
Yeah,
there.
yeah. He
He's
was the year before last. Yeah,
yeah. But
yeah.
but give him credit post dated credit for that too. So anyway, just about every move he's made has been really really good. So I think he deserves some recognition for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we'll make this one the last one just because we were on a time restriction, unfortunately. But we would love to talk all day, and I will get Coach back on soon. But yeah, make sure you smash that like button, and also check out the B-ball breakdown video on Jalen Brunson as the savior of the franchise and an MVP conversation. Now I've got the link in the chat, and I'll put it in the comment section for Replay Squad. But Buzzer Beater, appreciate you again. Great work tonight, joining us and everyone joining in the conversation. Coach, who's some of the best coaches in the league that you feel? Um, and is also maybe is situation a factor in terms of roster and the worst?
I feel like you can still tell, depending on even if you're like tanking or whatever, you could probably get some semblance of the coach. But you got to go with the usual suspects, right? You got Spoelstra at the top, Kerr I'd put there. Who else am I missing here? I mean, I can tell you, I don't think that Chris Finch is on the top of that list, and Mark Dengel,
Mike Brown, does he?
Mike
Brown doesn't get a
Brown.
lot of talk
No, I
in
wouldn't
sack.
put him at the top. Um, who else? Who else? Mike Malone deserves to be in the. He's kind of unheralded, but I like what he's done with their offense to unlock all that is important. So I like him as well in that conversation. I mean, Popovich, I suppose, is always in that mix, even though I don't know. I'm not loving. I've seen a little. I haven't watched a ton of Spurs to be honest, but like what I have seen is like I don't know. I feel like there could be better decisions being made there, unless they're just trying to completely tank and they don't care. But anyway, but Pop should has enough cachet to be in that conversation anyway. Other than that, I don't know. Am I missing anybody? Is situationally you're
Uh,
talking about someone like
what do you think of Udoka? He's helped
yeah.
Houston a bit.
He may, I wouldn't put him top five, but he's definitely, got a very strong presence, knows how to communicate, has good X's and O's.
Rick,
Quinn Snyder for the Hawks
yeah.
uh, is somebody who I've always loved hearing him talk, and like what his take on the game is impressive to me. So I give him a little bit of a shout out too.
Yeah. But what do you think of Rick Carlisle out in Indiana as a veteran coach?
Interestingly enough, here's a guy who I think got better as he got even older and older because he would call every play and micromanage the game for all those years. And when they got Luca, he finally relented and realized how much better that works because it unlocked him, and they had an all-time great offense for that first year at least. So he's good. He's good. He's a little bit more of like the old school techniques and stuff, which might hold him back a little bit these days. And I can't blame him. He's not going to change. Tibbs is not going to change. Pop is not going to change. Although Pop is probably the most modern of that era anyway. But he's good. He's very very solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing Indiana make a run here and see what they can do.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, yeah, as we wrap this show up, it's always been a pleasure to talk to Coach Nick. We know how busy he is. I've just got two requests. One request from everyone watching is to make sure you go watch B-Ball Breakdown's video from 2 weeks ago. The link is in the chat right now on Jalen Brunson and the Knicks season. And also a request for Coach. Hopefully we get one more Knicks video before the end of the regular season, if possible. And then also another conversation before the playoffs, as the Knicks are no doubt surging towards what could be one of their most successful seasons in decades.
Absolutely. Well, I will. I will do my best. I mean, I just people got to watch it, and I'll make it. That's the deal. So everybody out there who's watching this, watch it twice when I do the next video, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get it out there. I'll get on Reddit, etc. No, I appreciate, because you're one of the people that obviously aren't in the Knicks circles that really pushing the Jalen Brunson to an MVP conversation. But I
Mhm.
find it bizarre he's not even in the conversation. Like NBA.com doesn't even have him ranked top 10.
Really?
Coach.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
Domantas Sabonis is ahead of him, who's been playing with De'Aaron Fox all season.
Yeah, that's silly. Well, I'll do my best to shift that conversation if on Twitter first, and then we can get to another video. But yeah, everyone out there who hasn't seen it, check out the video out. It's basically an argument for him being MVP already now, and that was a couple weeks ago. So yeah, for sure, I will. I'll be more than happy to watch more Knicks footage and put something together.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, you get all our guys back and all the lineups. But yeah, everyone watching, thanks for joining us. Replay Squad, salute. Smash those like buttons, and we'll see you soon. We've got more guests lined up. It's going to be a fun all-star break as we get healthy and we make a run, yeah, for the playoffs. But